Well, how we doing? It's Ivy Nation Sports Talk. We're up and rolling along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. The backdrop is a little bit different. Jesse was sitting here in front of all my stuff last week. I'm back. How are you today, Jess? Good to see
I
you.
am
It's been a little
freaking
while.
tired. It's a Monday. I've really not been wanting to work, to be honest with you. I went and just picked up my car, so that was nice. It's all
Do
done.
they have it done? It's ready to go?
Yeah, so I got my new car.
Congratulations.
Not new car or
New engine, new motor.
new
right?
motor. I saw the news today of the green uniform, so that made me happy. That was a nice part of my Monday.
We will we'll save the green uniforms for rapid fire. We will discuss those in detail. Salty is coming at you right away. He says that you seem extraordinarily disinterested today. Man, coming at you hard.
I know. I don't know what I did to deserve that, but it's a Monday. I don't know what people want me to do. I'm just tired.
Just answer this question for me. This is practice number 5 for Notre Dame today. It is the 4th practice availability we've had today. Did your co-host today, in comparison to your co-host last week, did your co-host complain that there was nothing to talk about? You know, what are you going to talk about on today's show?
No, I had no issues. I just popped up in my email and there it was.
There it was. Didn't have like hand wringing. What are we going to talk about? I saw him today, Vince, and Brian was giving him a hard time as well about, like Vince apparently was like hitting up Brian about, I don't know what we're going to talk about on these shows. And I'm like, dude, it's like the first days of training camp. It's not like you had to put together a show 4th of July weekend or the end of June. Ago. Yes, that's right. It's not like he had to put together shows when there was nothing going on. I actually went on vacation while training camp was starting. And that's, we do a whole different story, the timing of that. Let's just say when I bought my airfare for my vacation, Notre Dame did not, give me a heads up on when training camp
They weren't looking out for you?
No, I was hoping training camp was actually going to start this week, and based on, when it started last year and everything else, but that's a different story. We have plenty of things that we're going to get to today because we do have training camp to talk about. Got a couple videos from today's camp, a lot of different things that we're going to talk about today. Is there anything in particular you are most excited to talk about on today's show?
Yeah, just looking at some of the stuff you sent me, I wanted to. Last week ended up being really busy for me. For everyone who doesn't know, I just had a lot of responsibilities, a lot of just miscellaneous tasks going on, and so while I was in town, I was really hoping to go to practice at some point. Ideally, wanted to make the full practice. That didn't work, and then I wanted to potentially make it to the Friday practice because that was linebackers and Al Golden. And so when I saw some of the stuff about Jalen Sneed in there, everything kind of clicked for me in terms of what Al Golden's trying to accomplish. So I'm really excited about that aspect of today's show. And I know the linebackers and the defense is a talking point for a lot of people. And a lot of people believe that, the linebacker play last year was subpar, which I agree with in some areas. But I also believe that the linebacker core didn't get enough credit, and I think they're going to be really spectacular this season just based off of some of these comments that I've seen so far.
Well, let's just start with that then, because we've got a lot of offensive stuff we're going to get to, and it was it's primarily we got 5 periods of practice this morning, and they started off doing special teams type stuff, like some punt coverage type things and those kind of things. And it's like, snooze fest. The quarterbacks are over doing their things. The offensive line was doing its thing. And in the meantime, Marty Biaggi, it's a third of the game, right? You want
Third
to
of the game.
focus. Well, you want to focus on some special teams. I've got no problem with that, but that doesn't make it interesting for any of us to talk about. And so then when they were done with that, we primarily got to see some offensive type stuff because it was still mostly some special teams type things that were going on. We've had, Al Golden did talk to the media after Friday's practice. We've got a chance now to talk to a few different coaches and players after practice. One of the things Al Golden said last week was he was talking about the concept of horizontal depth versus vertical depth. And of course, vertical depth, you're talking about the two deep and beyond, first string, second string, third string, whatever. That's vertical depth. But horizontal depth, as he was explaining it, is essentially the ability to plug some different guys in some different roles who can play, like this guy might not be the traditional number one linebacker, but you can plug him in and play him next to the number ones and do some things. And he was talking specifically about Jalen Sneed, and he said that he's a rover in the base defense. He's a will linebacker in the 4-2 nickel package. And Sneed also has the ability to pressure or line up on the edge on third down. So when, and then Golden was like, that's really what he does. We're trying to get him going, doing some of those things. He was doing some of that stuff at the end of last season, which was awesome for them. And that's when he got to play. All four of his games came in Notre Dame's last four games. So what do you think about Al Golden and the defensive staff using Jalen Sneed this way?
Yeah, I think it's actually a brilliant idea to use Jalen Sneed in this manner because while he's not there maybe as a starting Mike or Will linebacker in the base defense, he is there athletically, and his knowledge of the defense has proven that he needs to be on the field as many ways as possible. And what Al Golden is doing by putting him, he's the rover in the base defense, he's the Will in the 4-2 nickel defense. To me, that shows that it's just a talented guy whose athleticism that you can't necessarily get off the field. And when you go into nickel package, for instance, that's going to be a will linebacker that is more so in there for coverage reasons, right? He's not in there for his run stuffing ability. And the reason why I kind of brought this up earlier on, or why it's so exciting, is because do you remember when Al Golden first started at Notre Dame? He said that all of the linebackers have to basically know the various linebacker positions, right? He had all of them practicing at the different linebacker positions. Well, this is the case and example why Jalen Sneed was doing that, because again, he's playing the rover in one defense, he's playing the will linebacker in a nickel defense, and the more that you can learn those positions early on, it allows you to be interchangeable like this. It allows your skill set to translate across the defense. And really, ultimately, what it shows is if you can know all of the linebacker positions on the defense, it's likely that you have a full understanding of the defense as a whole. And I think that is what Al Golden is getting to ultimately, is Jalen Sneed finally has a grasp of the bigger picture of the defense and understanding, why things are being done a certain way. And I think him being able to move to these various positions is a case in point proven that's the case.
Yeah, and Salty says in salty fashion, no wonder the linebackers don't appear to know what they're doing, because they're playing all the positions. They're playing all over the place. And this is something we brought up in the spring, because I remember talking to Preston Zinter, one of the freshman linebackers, and asked him, so what are you concentrating on? Are you working on all of the linebacker positions? Are you working on just one? And he's like, no, we're learning them all. It seems like that would be quite a bit for a young linebacker to have to learn all three linebacker positions. Maybe you start off and they see you as a will, and when you're first coming in the door, first you focus on getting the will down, and then once you have the will down, maybe you expand and you work on more. Now, with Jalen Sneed, you're talking about a great athlete who was a five-star athlete, five-star recruit coming in the door, Who did people want to see more of last year? They wanted to see more of Jalen Sneed, but we didn't see that much of Jalen Sneed again until the end of the season. Once they got to the last 3 games of the regular season, then the bowl game, they used those 4 games to get him on the field. And you can go to 4 games and still keep a season of eligibility. So he still had that remaining. Well, it's kind of been described as he's doing the Bo Bauer stuff where he's the package guy. And really, like, you might as well just put a big S on Jalen Sneed's chest, like the Superman package when you put him out there, because now you have a great athlete who you're sort of dropping into that role that Bo Bauer had in these different packages. You're capitalizing on the strengths that he has right now. Like, he might not have a complete grasp like a guy like JD Bertrand has, for example, of everything. But if you are able to capitalize on the things that he does really well, you can still make that guy a unique weapon and one that can greatly help out your defense. And it's something Vince and I have talked about before. Like, that's how you get guys on the field who maybe aren't quite ready to be in a starting role and be out there for 80% of the snaps or 90% of the snaps or whatever. You capitalize on the strengths that they have right now and you work them in that way. That's how you get those guys out there.
Yeah, and I think for these younger guys, none of them should be getting caught up in, are they a Mike, a Will, or a Rover? They're just a linebacker, and that's ultimately what's going to be the best thing for them, is because of what you said. This defense is built around building sub packages, different personnel packages depending on what the offense is coming out in. And so the more guys that you have the ability to move around, again, just being linebackers in a broader term, then it allows you to puzzle together, what's going to be the best combination of linebackers per, maybe it's a matchup thing. Maybe a team's more concentrated in the run. Maybe another team is more, we're going to spread you out like a North Carolina and pass, and Clemson and pass on the perimeter and stuff like that. So the ability to have a lot of, as Al Golden says, vertical depth, it just allows them to really piece together all these different packages and game plan about, what they're trying to essentially stop.
What do you think? The cheat sheet is asking what we think about him as an edge guy. They used him like that against South Carolina. He says he likes the Will Rover, but not putting him on the edge. I mean, I like him. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the first thing I think of is I don't think he would technically be an edge guy, but him and the Rover and the edge guy would kind of be in a replace type situation where maybe the Rover is coming off the edge and the Viper is dropping into coverage, right? So they're disguising a blitz like that. Or maybe it's a bluff where the Rover lines up on the line of scrimmage and then he falls off into coverage. And then maybe you bring both of them at the same time, but you have some sort of stunt where one guy's looping in, one guy's looping out.
And you're going to have 2 great athletes over there doing that. Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah.
No, that was right where I was ending at.
Yep. That's exactly. And, that's when you have, like, especially if you've got him and Botello out there at the same time, for example, like that Rover and
like
and
a yo-yo. Like one guy's dropping, one guy's coming. You just don't know who it's going to be.
You don't know who it's going to be, and you've got 2 great athletes over there in the meantime. And then, as you said, you can also add some other stuff, whether it's a stunt or a loop or any of those different kind of things. There's so many different things I think you can do with athletes of that caliber. So, I don't mind it. Get to the quarterback, right? They need more sacks. They need more disruption. And
it's
like there on the field, that's what you're going to get.
I like them bringing him off the edge because they had a lot of success with bringing those kind of corner blindside blitzes in the past, right? Like blitzes that kind of just you get your most athletic guy on the quarterback as fast as possible. And I think the advantage of someone like Jalen Sneed is he has almost speed like a cornerback, but then he has the size. Once he hits a quarterback, there's probably it's going to be more impactful. And there's a less chance that quarterback is going to get away.
D-Hawk, just to clarify, he says, not sure Sneed has the size for Viper, reminds him of JOK. He would not be playing the Viper. He would be the Rover in that instance, but, he would be playing next to or around the Viper on that side, whether it's Botello or Tuihalamaka or whoever it happens to be. It's, again, like it just gives you more great athletes out there on the field at the same time. Now, in the meantime, Maris Leofau says he needs to play faster. And I think that you can kind of, it's open for interpretation, I think, depending on what exactly that means. Because I think people see Maris Leofau out there flying around and it's like, well, he's fast. He's running all over the place. What's your interpretation? What does that mean, Mr. Former linebacker?
Yeah, so when Maris says that he needs to play faster, it's really a quite easy answer. He's saying that he needs to make his reads essentially faster, because everything that Maris is doing out there, it looks like he's going 100%, like 100 miles per hour. His issues don't have to do with not being quick enough or fast enough. His issues are reading the play correctly in time to get to his destination quick enough. So when he talks about playing faster, again, it's quite simply that he just needs to make his reads faster and more efficiently and know, I'm at point A and I need to get to point B now.
Right. And that's exactly what it is. Like the essentially, the more he knows, the quicker he can diagnose, the quicker he can get there and actually be there on the field. And, but he kind of seems like, especially as you're adding Snead to the mix, and if other guys start getting added to the mix, which it sure seems like there will be, that Leofau could be kind of the odd man out in the linebacker rotation, and he becomes potentially more of a special teams guy. But that's on him, and as much as he can improve during training camp, I think. So,
I said it last week. I see a way in which Osbury finds his way onto the field this season.
I don't doubt it. So I've got a couple of quick videos from practice. One is of Chancey Stuckey with the wide receivers doing one of his unique drills in the individual wide receiver session. So we will take a look at that right now. Let's pull that up here on the screen. This is a drill from practice today. You can see the receivers do a little come to balance, a little slip there. That's all right. What's the side to side? Is it karaoke? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, that's what I would call it.
What you guys called it?
17 didn't really try as hard there as everyone else, but
could have tried a little bit harder, is what you're saying. This kind of blew up on social media this summer, where he was doing something similar back in the spring, where they did they do something, they balance on one leg. What do you think about a drill? And now remember, this is from a 5-minute period at the beginning of practice where they're doing individual work. What do you think about this drill?
Yeah, so Vince and I kind of talked about this last week. It's when you see the first 5 periods of practice, it's largely position groups doing individual drills. It's most of the time doing something, to get warmed up related to practice. And then in this drill specifically, it's kind of maybe something that Chauncey Stuckey wants to emphasize on this practice, right? Because it's a specific drill that he's having these guys do. And to me, the reason why this drill is important, or why it makes sense, is it looks like he's having these guys, basically do a change of motion, a sudden change of motion. Maybe it's coming in and out of a cut. Maybe it's stopping on a route and getting, cutting out of a route and getting, maybe you're stopping on that route and you're selling a streak, and then maybe you hit a comeback, right? It's just all change of motion stuff. And I think when the balance thing comes into effect, in order to properly get good change of motion, or have really good explosion out of change of motion, you have to have balance, your center of gravity to do that. And so when he has them kind of stop like that on a dime, come to, balance, and then cut out of it, that's kind of what it reminded me of in a drill like that. But something that's very beneficial. And obviously, again, while they're doing it, is because there must be an emphasis on that today in practice. Maybe they were practicing routes like that of, getting in and out of cuts, or change of pace, change of explosion, stuff like that.
I can't remember who it was. I wish I could, but over the weekend, it's funny that I saw this today because over the weekend there were some pro guys who I saw doing something very similar with again like the one leg, come to balance, and then explode, change of direction, all that kind of stuff. I think there's much more science to it than a lot of people think. Something very simple, but again, it's like focusing on these little things like this when you're in an individual period at the beginning of practice. We didn't see a lot of this with the previous wide receivers coach. So I think it's only good stuff. I think it's only going to pay dividends in the long run. Now, got a little bit of video here. We're only allowed to use so much, or else I would have more. Got a little bit of video here. This is the 4 quarterback drill throwing wide receivers simultaneously at practice today. One thing you'll notice is it's obvious I've worked in radio a long time. I did not follow the deep balls downfield. But I'm going to play this. Can I mute this? We don't have to hear all the background sound. But I want to watch. If you have anything, just go ahead and jump in here real quick if there's anything in particular. But now this one, you don't see it as much. There was no crossing pattern in here. That is something that watching some of these, this drill specific, and this was like the most exciting thing that we really got to see before we left practice today was this 4 quarterback drill. I did notice there were a lot more crossing patterns that they were doing, in this drill. You saw more crossing patterns, and that's something that I think has sorely disappeared from a lot of route concepts and football in general. Definitely we haven't seen as many of those at Notre Dame in recent years. So that was just something that kind of made my eyes perk up, was seeing that, the old crossing pattern that they were throwing out there.
Yeah, and I think that the crossing patterns are something that's really essential because, especially in this offense, because Sam Hartman's going to work his way downfield, right? Like the long ball really isn't going to be the issue. But I think what's nice about some of these underneath crossing routes is it provides some sort of like relief blanket. And when you have guys like Chris Tyree underneath there, and some of these, some of the faster, more athletic guys, I think that's really good because it gets your best players the ball in space. So it seems like a lot of these routes are going to be tailored towards, Chris Tyree, probably not going to run a ton of downfield routes. He's going to run those underneath kind of crossing routes. But again, that's good for his skill set because that's getting him the ball in space. And that's where he is at his best, is being quick and shifty, right? And I think another thing that I noticed is there wasn't a lot of like congestion in one area. It seemed like there was good spacing and flow underneath and both, kind of depth in terms of downfield. So I don't know necessarily if, at least I would think it's, that's all the routes that are being run on one play. It's just they have a quarterback. Every route has a quarterback throwing them the ball. So they're, maximizing their efficiency and stuff like that. But I really, again, like the spacing of having things underneath and then kind of on the intermediate level. But the middle of the field seemed open. Both sidelines seemed open. There wasn't a lot of, congesting to one area. It felt like really good spacing. And yeah, different route concepts there.
And I like the concept of that kind of safety valve, with the cross and whatever it
right
happens to be.
Because it's not always going to be there, right? But
right.
Sam Hartman has the ability to check down, like he can go through his routes rather quickly, progress through his reads quickly, and then kind of have that security blanket underneath of just, dumping it down to someone. And you would love to see it be Chris Tyree because he's going to give you the best chance in space to gain those extra yards or yards after catch.
Yeah, number one ND fan asks if we got Payne's double ball catch. It was actually Jadarian Price with a double ball catch. They were doing this 4 quarterback drill, and he made a quick cut in and then jab back out, and 2 quarterbacks accidentally threw him a ball. So he makes one catch. He caught one first, and then he reaches out with his left hand, and he made a one-handed catch of the other ball, and then the next thing you know, he's running with 2 balls coming back out of there. So that's not going to happen in any games, but it was a nice little skill to have. I think the bigger takeaway for me is just seeing Jadarian Price after that Achilles last year, being able to make some sharp, quick cuts and have the great hands as well, that he showed on that one particular catch there. Well, I guess double particular catch there with catching 2 balls at one time. Sam Hartman thrown to Chris Tyree quite a bit, especially on the deep balls. And, you would see Tyree when his deep route would come up, Hartman would kind of jump around, like jump to the different spot, and he would throw him deep. What do you make of that?
To me, that is a very there's a Notre Dame coaching staff putting a point of emphasis on wanting Sam Hartman to throw the ball to Chris Tyree, just because I think they really want to develop that connection, right? Like Chris Tyree is already, someone who's trying to make up reps as a wide receiver, for lack of better terms. And so I think that they quite literally just want the guy who's going to be throwing him the ball majority of the time to be doing so in practice, because it's a different release point. Finding Chris Tyree's chest area in comparison to some of these bigger, taller, more broader wide receivers. I just think it takes a little bit more of a refined skill set to consistently hit Chris Tyree on the money. And you don't want someone like him to get out of sync because he's not with a quarterback who can necessarily do it, because then it turns into bad practice for Chris Tyree, right? So right. I really think that Sam Hartman throwing him the ball is just because he's really the only guy that can do it, and they're trying to establish that connection early on, just because of, again, what I talked about. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to find Chris Tyree in the sweet spot compared to these other guys.
And he had a hard time finding that sweet spot in the spring because of what you were talking about. I think, like the newness of Chris Tyree, 2, the newness of Sam Hartman. And I think the more that Hartman can throw to Chris Tyree now, the better that connection is going to be when it counts, once the things start flying live. It's one thing for Tyree to take 20,000 balls off the machine this summer, but it's another thing to have the actual quarterback making that connection with him. So I think you're right. You do that as much as you can. You work that into your plan. You do that as much as you can now, and it becomes second nature later on. So really, it was just kind of interesting to see that today. Jaden Greathouse, Salty's guy, the great one. First chance for me to see him, the slim down version of Greathouse, 6'1", 204 pounds. He looks good out there. Looks
is
leaner.
He number 19?
Yes, he is.
I saw a really good video clip of him versus Ramon Henderson at one point today.
Okay.
And because Ramon Henderson's number 11, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was like a one-on-one drill. Both guys did really well, but Greathouse won the rep off a really good catch along the sideline. And he looks really good for someone of his age. He looks very experienced out there. And again, another guy that I expect, him and Osbury were my guys last week that I said as, freshmen that I anticipate that they can make the roster, at least they're going to be on the traveling roster, but they could start seeing some significant playing time by game 4 or 5 this season, in my opinion.
Very impressed. I'm sure Brian mentioned this earlier today. We talked about it when we were walking out. His route running, especially for a freshman, very good. Derek throwing a little jab.
Welcome
in there.
To the chat.
Yes, that's right. He says Greathouse is a bust.
I hope your weekend in Michigan was enjoyable.
We got to see on our way out of practice. We were. The 5th period ended, so then it's like, okay, your 5 periods are over. You got to start walking out. And so as we're walking out, they threw some DBs in the mix. And we saw Tobias Merriweather against Cam Hart on a deep route toward the end zone, and maybe underthrown a little bit, but I think maybe with some intention because, both Hart and Merriweather had good position. Like Hart couldn't have covered it much better. And then, Tobias Merriweather with his size, Sam Hartman threw a ball to kind of let Merriweather, I think, try to make a play on it. Cam Hart was able to jar it loose. It spun up in the air, and they're both kind of not quite twirling around, but both trying to find that loose ball. And it looked for a second like Merriweather was going to be able to reel it in, but as he looked up, his helmet kind of came loose, and it kind of dislodged. I don't know if he didn't have the chin strap quite locked up tight enough for what, but it kind of, that helmet kind of dipped down in his eyes a little bit. He lost it. Otherwise, I thought he might have been able to have a chance to make a really good acrobatic play. But that's one of those fun, you want to see more of those kind of guys going head to head against each other when you can. But that's what we got on the way out today, the Merriweather versus Cam Hart. And then on the offensive line, only really curious thing there, we saw a little bit of cross-training. Andrew Christophic was working at tackle for a little bit. And Tosh Baker and Emil Wagner were both working at guard. And they're, of course, they're the presumed number 2 tackles right now. Baker on the left side behind Alt and Wagner on the right side behind Blake Fisher. They were both working at guard a little bit. And Joe Rudolph, he's the assistant that we got to talk to after practice today. And he basically just said, we kind of want to see what these guys can do. Wagner and Baker specifically, are they potentially guards in the future and that kind of thing? So they were just rotating it in there. But the guard battles are still more about Billy Strouth and Coogan on the left side, and Christophic and Spindler on the right side. And it sounded like that right side guard position, Jesse, Spindler was your guy. Spindler was your guy back in the spring, and it sounded
everyone laughed at me.
Sounded like that right guard might be that competition might be tightening up a little bit right now. He didn't want to go into great detail, but if you listen to some of the things that he was saying, and there's actually going to be a story coming up, if it's not already up, at irishbreakdown.com about those guards Rudolph talking about it. Sounds like it could be tightening up a little bit there on the right side.
Everyone made fun of me for going with Rocco Spindler first overall, but he was the biggest in the position battle that I think had the biggest boomer bust type activity. I either look like that ultimately is like what hits my home run and wins it for me, or I look like the complete idiot and I completely lose. So I heard, and this is, what Vince was talking about last week. He said there is a noticeable difference in Rocco Spindler's physique from the end of spring camp to this camp, and he is looking a lot more lean and mean and a little bit quicker. I don't know if you got the chance to see him at all today.
Yeah, I would say I would agree with that. He's the athletic quotient is up a little bit. I think he and I think he looks a little bit, like he's like that. Those hands, he's looking really strong with the hands as well. So it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens there, I think.
Well, and like Vince and I talked about last week, I don't think there's an issue with having a surplus of offensive linemen who could potentially kind of not rotate around, but like I guess Brian was talking about the idea of you have guards, kind of 2 guards that come in, and then maybe one guard gets spelled, and then the next series another guard gets spelled, and the starting guard comes back in. Like there's just something that they've kind of looked at before. I just think that we might see a little bit of to start the season. I don't know if we'll 100%, even though who your starting 5 are on the offensive line, I don't think that's necessarily going to be indicative of that's set in stone for the entire way. I think there's going to be kind of and just hearing that some of these guys are working around different positions, I just think that's going to be the case. Just guys are going to have the ability to kind of platoon in and out at certain spots.
Yeah, they're gonna be slugging it out here in the chat pretty soon. John says Andrew Christophic will be the starting right guard, and Tommy says Rocco is the starting right guard. And Jesse, let's see what you think about this. Tim says, even if it's a tie, don't you go with the younger guy? So, like, say they're playing even.
That would be my thought philosophy.
Just go with the younger guy, play for the future a
If
little
they're
bit.
that even, yeah, I think you got to play with for the future until the younger guy kind of proves some sort of immaturity, or maybe someone brought up a good question here about recognizing stunts and blitzes. That's what's gotten them in trouble in the past. So I think it's ultimately going to come down to who's going to do better in that regard. Who's going to be the guy who can pick up blitzes and really stay on their cues and everything, and benefit the offensive line.
I think kind of listening to Joe Rudolph today, and I'm not, telling you one or the other, but I think that, he talked about sort of the ability to really be destructive in there as a guard, like to kind of, kind of come. He didn't use the word vengeance, but that kind of thing, like really, like who's going to be, a guy who's really going to get physical inside. And I think that it sounds like that could be a trait that it comes down to between the two. And
Well,
as a
that
matter
makes
of fact,
sense because the guard's the toughest position on the field. He's always, or sorry, amongst the offensive line. And really on the field. It's just a guard's got to be on it. Like if he's pulling, he's got to be pulling and just ready to lay the wood on someone. First guy that he sees coming around the corner, or first person that he sees going through the hole if he's lead blocking. A guard position is a position where you want to deliver the punch, not be the person who receives the punch, essentially. And I think that goes along with what you're talking about, the aggressiveness that they're looking for in the guard position. It's like a perfect example is Zach Martin. I mean, look at him. Anytime he's pulling, anytime he's inline blocking, it's with intent. He's always the guy delivering the blow. People fear him, not the other way around.
So here's kind of what Joe Rudolph was saying. I just found the quote. These are the three things that he says that they've got that he wants from these guys when he was asked about what he's looking for from who's going to win this spot. One, you got to be accountable, he said. Two, control the controllables, penalties, assignments, lineman assignment, the details with things. Secondly, win the point of attack. We need guys that can flat out win and create opportunities for the back. Win at the point of attack and in the protection game. Three, guys that can play in a way where they make guys around them better. And he says, you can hit a landmark, you can have your hands in, you can do all those things, but if you can't win or punch a hole in that defense, then you're going to have a problem. There's going to be a lot of plays kind of mushing in there, but the guys that can find a way to win at the point, those are the guys you have to feature and keep helping to grow. That is a quote from Joe Rudolph. So again, like win that point of attack, punch a hole in the defense was the specific phrasing that he used. Punch a hole in the defense. So I think it's going to just come down to, it sounds like, maybe who's just flat out the most physical kind of nasty
who's
guy
controlling
in
the
there,
line of
but
scrimmage.
it's also control the line of scrimmage, but also obviously be assignment sound and all that kind of stuff, like you were talking about with our guy Zach Martin. All right, so those are some things from practice today. We had a lot more things happen though today. Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
I am ready for rapid fire.
Let's do it. And I'll throw some other stuff in here as we go as well. So Notre Dame unveiled their green jerseys and uniforms for the September 23rd Ohio State game. Do you buy or sell the look?
I am a big buyer of the look, and hopefully you can see my screen in some ways, because I am presenting now the jerseys. So first,
jerseys and pants, I guess we should say.
Yeah, the full combination. So I'll just start off kind of, I buy the look, and I would put the look at just about a 9 out of 10. And the only reason I wouldn't go a 10 out of 10 is because I would like just a little bit more white sprinkled in there. But I thought they nailed the uniforms with the green, all green, white lettering and the gold trim. I would have maybe liked to see like a whiter gold kind of stripe down the side of the pants, but I think if you're going to go green, you have to go all green. Like that's the emphasis. I saw a lot of people complaining on social media about, yeah, like why not go white pants or, whatever. And like, I get that, like would have been cool. Sure. But again, to me, if you're going to go green, you might as well do the whole thing. I just would have liked a little bit more color. Again, maybe with a white stripe or a white and gold stripe down the side of the pants, whatever it might be. I just would like to see a little bit more of the accents on the pants. But here are some of those more finer details. And yours truly put this beautiful slideshow together. I think the cleats look really cool too. Again, all green with the gold. And I like the minimal details. It's just got the ND emblem on the shoulder pads. Again, all white with the trim of gold. And the same thing you see on Sam Hartman's kind of hip pocket there. Above his thigh pad, another, Notre Dame emblem that's white and with the gold trim. And then here's some more kind of full zoomed out body pics. I think they look great all together. Like, again, I think if we wanted to get down to the picky nitty gritty, yeah, like we could, fine tune or tweak some stuff here or there. But I really think they nailed the jersey top, and that's the most important part. They kept it relatively simple, which again, I like. They didn't overcomplicate it. They didn't add a bunch of, like in some of the Shamrock Series uniforms, we see some unnecessary, in my opinion, stuff here and there. But these are really nice and simple. I like the shade of green. And again, if you're going to wear the green uniforms, I like the idea of going all out, wearing all green.
I think you hit it right there at the end. I think this is the best shade of green possibly they've ever had. I like this green. It's a lot better than the Kelly green that they've had. This look with, this is something that we've talked about. The white on green is much better looking than the blue on green.
Yes,
with those
100%.
Kelly greens that they've worn the last couple of years when they've had the greens. I like this a lot better. I can take or leave the green pants. I'd still prefer that they go gold, but at the same time, I also would not mind if they had a white pant to go along with this green jersey, because I think that would be a really good look as well.
A white stripe down the side and then maybe like a gold thinner stripe on each side of that white stripe. Like, wouldn't that like a pinstripe almost in baseball pants?
See, that's what
wouldn't that take it home for you if they went with these all green pants?
I think so, because I'm on record. I've pretty consistently said that I've never been a fan of the monochrome type, look, which is what this is, but it's different enough that I guess I can kind of forgive it a little bit. I agree. I think that, maybe a white stripe down the leg would kind of break it up a little bit, make it, look even a little bit crisper, like you said, but I can live with this because I like the green so much compared to what they've had before. So
I'm
that these I'm jerseys up there at 9 as well.
Like crazy. Yeah. Like these, yeah. I can't wait to get my hands on one of these. I might have to buy a Sam Hartman jersey. I don't know, but I can't remember the last time I've been so excited to potentially buy a jersey, let alone a quarterback jersey for Notre Dame. And I think that these are nailed. And I think Sam Hartman wearing these along with Audric Estime is like your perfect kind of display, or mannequin, whatever you might want to call it.
Yeah. And from what I understand, we could be seeing another set of uniforms announced here in the near future, in terms of the Shamrock Series. So we'll see. Scale of 1 to 10. Rate the Jerry Maguire themed video they made to make the announcement.
So I'm probably going to disappoint a lot of people here, mainly you. I watched the video and I knew it was in reference to something, but I couldn't figure out what it was in reference to. I knew that they were trying to do something. I Googled Jerry Maguire. It is a 1996 film. That's the same year I was born. I think people got to cut me some slack here. I don't think I might have seen the movie. Like if it's, you've seen it. I know you've watched it. It's probably been on at the house at some point when I've, but I just can't remember it.
Yeah.
I can't really remember it. Again, I knew that they were trying to do something, it was in reference to something. So I'll have to leave it up to you of how well they pulled it off. But I don't think it was cringy or anything. I thought it was relatively funny. And I thought like most stuff that they've been doing, I like the effort of putting it into some sort of like skit. You know what I mean? It's better than years past of just kind of nothing, right? Like I think this brings just a little bit more fun. an excitement to it. Even if you're someone like me, we're like, what is this in reference to?
They did. You see, and that's the thing. I mean, you're not that old. You're 27, and the movie, as you said, came out around the time you were born. The movie I think was like 95, 90. It was like in that range. So like Sam Hartman and Audric Estime, who were in the video, and Audric was doing the Cuba Gooding Jr. Cuba Gooding Jr., by the way, won an Academy Award for playing Rod Tidwell. Show Me the Money, was what the whole Audric was mimicking, was the Show Me the Money thing. I just felt like it was a bit of a dated reference. It wasn't like The Hangover last year, which is still like, it's actually kind of amazing to think of how old The Hangover is now. Like when you think of like The Hangover came out when there were still flip phones, like before the smartphone ever came out. And like, if there was a smartphone when they were doing The Hangover, how much that changes the whole plot of that movie. And, like that movie is like half as old as Jerry Maguire. So I just felt like they probably had to explain to Audric Estime exactly who he was, supposed to be mimicking in this. And like the tweets were coming out last night, and they were doing the retweets. Did you know the human brain weighs 8 pounds? And, he's like throwing out Troy Aikman stats and all that stuff, which the kid is doing in Jerry Maguire. But, I thought they did a decent enough job of it.
Oh, that's what that was in reference to.
This is why I've got to give it like a 6.5, 7, just because if you're not probably 35 years or older, you don't get any of the references in that thing. So, and maybe even older than that, maybe even have to be closer to Vince's age. Cause like Vince would have been like 15 when that movie came out, and he's in his early 40s now. He's like 42 going on 43. So I don't know. They did a good enough job. It's just like very dated references though.
Yeah, I think I would have liked something a little bit more like Hangover-esque, right? Something a little bit more relevant, a little bit more current. And, maybe I start to think about like there's these recruits coming into college now. Like they.
You have no idea. You complete me, Derek says to Jesse. Uh-oh. Vince is here. I'm not throwing shade, but I know Vince doesn't remember anything, past like a 15-year-old reference. So
But yeah, I just think if someone like myself, like you reference, has a hard time, knowing what the references are, thinking about recruits who are even younger than I
right.
I think that would be my only complaint. I thought the video was well done. It was still overall like amusing, and I enjoyed it, even though I didn't know what was going on. And again, I appreciate the effort, right? It's like they don't just go out and say, here's our green uniforms and post some pictures. Like there's at least effort of something to accompany this reveal.
For sure. The old social media, Fighting Irish media, who's putting them together, they've been very creative the last few years. They've been coming on strong with all the stuff that they're cranking out over there. Shout out to Vince, though. All right, so Marcus Freeman told ESPN.com's Adam Rittenberg this in terms of his first-year approach compared to how he's approaching things with his team now. Here's what Freeman said. Last year, I'm talking about national championships, winning the 12th and all this stuff, and you're 9-4. That's what I've gone away from. Don't even talk about those things. All we need to do is focus on reaching our full potential. Who cares about week 12? Stop talking about national championships. That's too big. It's too big for them to really understand what it takes for that to be the result. That's been my mindset. That's got to be our mentality, that every game we perform at our full potential, we reach the full potential as a program. If that's good enough to beat every team we play, great. If not, then we better recruit better, but we control how we perform. So that, again, from Marcus Freeman. What do you think of that shift in mentality, Jess?
Yeah, I really like this shift in mentality. I think it shows some of the maturity or the growth of Marcus Freeman, as a head coach in year one to a head coach in year two. We talked about, what does Notre Dame need to change, or what does, the players need to look like, and the upgrade at quarterback and the upgrade at wide receiver and blah, 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 blah. I really think that one thing that is often overlooked is this is a young coach in year two at a big time university. And so to already have such a drastic change in mindset, to me shows, again, really good growth on behalf of Marcus Freeman. And it's something that I personally buy into as well. There's no reason to get concerned about week 12 or, the overarching national championship umbrella or stuff like that. It's got to be, you focus on the data point at hand, and that is 1 week at a time. You play to your full potential 1 week at a time, and you do everything in your possibility to be prepared at that, per that given week. So I think you're going to see a team that is going to play better. And to me, this shrinks the opportunity for opportunities like Stanford or Marshall to kind of creep back in, because that's how those things get exploited. Is you're thinking too far down the road. You're thinking too far bigger picture. And a team like Stanford rolls in and executes a really solid game plan. And again, you're too concentrated on the bigger level rather than focusing on this game plan and what it takes to beat someone like Stanford.
Yep. And Tim B says, prove it by not playing down to lesser competition. And theoretically, just kind of what you were wrapping up with there, Jesse, this shift in mindset is geared toward, alleviating that, like not playing down to the level of competition. Because if you're talking about national championships right off the bat, your focus is way too big. You're not focused on this snap. Yeah, you're not focused on this snap, this play, the whole thing. And like, you can talk about cliches and all these different things, and coaches talk about the process and all that kind of stuff. But this is essentially like, if you're talking about winning national championships, which, like, that should be on your goal board or, up on, your team meeting room, that should be something that's up there. But your day-to-day focus has to be more on this kind of stuff that Marcus Freeman is talking about. And Andrew says he agrees with the quotes. The Red Sox have the same mentality in 2004 when they were down against the Yankees, one game at a time. Don't let us win tonight, like Kevin Millar said. Like, who's Notre Dame's Kevin Millar? Who's their big poppy? More importantly, like, who's that guy for Notre Dame?
To me, it's got to be the guy who's got a lot of wisdom and experience. And even though that they haven't been in big time games, I still think that they've played enough games to kind of know, that we can calm down here a little bit. We can find a relief valve to escape this. And to me, that's got to be Sam Hartman. He's the commander of your offense. He's got all of the experience to back it up. He's got to have the maturity to bring the calmness to the room when everything else seems to be on fire. Like that to me is Sam Hartman offensively. And then defensively, I'd have to go between it would have to be Bertrand for me, because I think that he's the overall leader of that defense. Either Bertrand or Kaiser, just because they're really they are going to control the entire defense. And again, they have a lot of that experience and veteran leadership.
I think Bertrand is your Millar. He's like that guy, like, don't let us win tonight, like that emotional type stuff. But like, just based on how he performed, especially the second half of last season, Benjamin Morrison is like your poppy right now, though, right? Like your clutch guy, your guy that's going to make a play in a big moment.
Yeah. Gonna give you a game-changing type possession or play, right? Like that's what Big Papi was doing, was hitting home runs that were game-changing. In terms of defensively, a game changer is someone like Benjamin Morrison, who can flip the field and get you the ball back and create extra possessions.
I want to go back to the Jerry Maguire Show Me the Money. Andrew with a good one. They should have brought in Sean Astin, Rudy's 30th year anniversary. Here's what they need to do. That's like the perfect, like, they could have, like, recreated the Dan Devine scene where they're, walking in and they're throwing the jerseys on the table. Coach, I don't want to wear blue. I want to wear green. I want to wear green jerseys. That kind of thing, where like they're stacking the jerseys on the coach's desk. I think that's something like that for the next time they do a jersey reveal. I think that Rudy has to be worked in there somehow, don't you? Like everyone gets the Rudy references, right?
Yeah, especially if you're around Notre Dame, you'll definitely understand the Rudy references.
Yep.
So speaking of the green jerseys, we kind of got back on it. There's a group of people out there. Like I sent the green jerseys to a group text of mine. I was like, man, these green jerseys look awesome. And someone immediately said, it's basically along the lines of like, I wish they would never wear those cursed green uniforms. Do you buy into that at all? People saying that that the green uniforms have some sort of curse around them, or it doesn't matter what you wear. And
I can't tell you off the top of my head, but they've actually played better not played better, but like the whole green is a jinx kind of thing used to be a thing. When they've worn something green in recent years, they've actually won games.
Well, it used to be the green uniforms came out for every important game. It was like when Notre Dame and USC were like top 5 opponents, like, well, it's just a hard game that happens to go just the wrong way.
This is the way they should be doing it, though. And this is what I've said before. If you're going to do a green game, you do it how they've done it the last 2 years. You make the announcement well in advance. You let everyone know this is the green game. You're not doing it like, Boston College and some of these other games where, they've come out, they've warmed up in blue, they've gone back to the locker room, they come out, they're wearing green. It's like now you're saying we need the green to, to give us some kind of energy or emotion that's basically just going to wear off in 5 minutes once the ball is snapped. Just do it like they do now. Announce it well in advance, announce what your green game is going to be, and go with that.
See, I think it's funny because there's a conversation in the chat. Like, this is a real.
There we go.
This is a real thing. Like, I genuinely never knew. I was like, this. It's just a jersey. It doesn't matter. There's no such thing as a jinx or a hoax. And people are like, well, after this game, this is when it was, nullified. But before that, they were, I don't know. I just think it's funny to see that dialogue going on.
That's exactly right. Wanted to go back. Andrew is asking, is Jaden Greathouse similar to Michael Floyd? Seems like he may play heavy minutes. I think he's going to play a lot this year. And I've not, gone all in with freshman receivers very much, but this is a very talented receiver. And again, like just going back to his route running and his hands, and the combination of the two, plus the size and just the physical athletic skills that he has. Like I don't know that he's going to produce necessarily like Michael Floyd right away. And I wouldn't get quite that carried away, but I do think this is a guy who's going to play a lot this year. I'm buying in on that already.
I like the comparison.
Yeah. And Andrew was asking, I think somebody might have answered this earlier. Yes, Zeke Correll is the center. And we were talking about the guards earlier, but Correll is the center. Fill in the blank, Jess. Notre Dame 2024 offensive line commit Styles Prescott showing up at the Grill and Chill recruiting event Sunday wearing a Catholics versus Convicts t-shirt is blank.
Is a bold move, Cotton. But I respect it. At the end of the day, I respect it because
see, they could have done a dodgeball. They could have done a dodgeball.
I think it's I don't think you wear that shirt unless you are intending to make some sort of impression, right? Like you don't just show up to a Notre Dame cookout and basically reference one of the greatest, rivalries or moments in, college football / Notre Dame football history. So I love the boldness. I think it was awesome. And again, to me, it shows his intent and how serious, that Notre Dame means to him, right? Like you don't just, I just don't think you show up to something like this unless you have a lot of intent or interest in Notre Dame. So to me, it shows his commitment kind of to Notre Dame, I guess.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, you're walking in, you're announcing your presence with authority. Like you're saying, I'm Notre Dame through and through,
right.
Like that's basically what Catholics versus Convicts wearing that t-shirt says. If you're still a recruit and you're walking into an event like this, I'm Notre Dame through and through, and forget you if you think anything different about it. And I love the fact that Miami fans are still so butthurt about this whole thing. It's like 35 years later and counting, and they still can't get over it. Just watching that 30 for 30 from a couple years back that they did, and it's a bold move. It's a great move if you're Styles Prescott. I love it. And yes, they do play Miami next year, so it's going to be. I don't know. I think Vince and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. That used to be one of the great Notre Dame rivals, Notre Dame and Miami, but it's just another game now. You hope it's going to be an exciting game. Should be a good game next year, but it's just another game. I don't think that it's included as a rivalry game anymore because it's just been off the schedule so much for the last 30 plus years. Speaking of rivals, I don't know if this is a rival thing, but so we've got coach on coach and player on coach verbal assaults going on. You've got new Broncos head coach Sean Payton saying former Broncos head coach and current Jets offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett did, quote, one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL, end quote, with Russell Wilson in the Broncos last year. So that prompts Aaron Rodgers to go off on NFL Network. Here's his quote. Hackett is arguably my favorite coach I've ever had in the NFL. I thought it was very out of line, inappropriate, and I think he needs to keep my coach's name out of his mouth, end quote. So, Jess, you've got Sean Payton shooting off on one side, Aaron Rodgers shooting off on the other side. Do you have a problem with anything either one of them said?
So I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this because there's multiple pieces to it for me. I think overall the situation is petty. Like it should have never happened. I think I do have a problem with what Sean Payton said on behalf or speaking about Nathaniel Hackett. But actually someone who I surprisingly agree with for once in this lifetime is Aaron Rodgers. I don't mind him. Like after what was said, I don't mind him coming out and saying what he said, but I don't think that Sean Payton should have said anything in the first place. And so it should never prompted anything. And so all this again is just a bunch of petty crap for me, but I actually respect Aaron Rodgers for sticking up for his coach because, Vince and I kind of talked about this a little bit last week. I think Sean Payton is completely out of line saying something about Nathaniel Hackett. I think there is I don't think there's any reason for him to say, what the condition of things were left. It was a 1-year head coach. It was a guy who's never coached before. And I just think that in that type of situation, there's really no need for Sean Payton to comment on anything. Why can't he just, absorb kind of everything? And again, there's no real reason to tarnish kind of Hackett's name by throwing out these kind of stray bullets, right? And so to me, again, what this boils down to is I think this is a worse look for the Broncos ownership and GM situation because they're the ones who hired Hackett. They're the ones who brought on Hackett. They're the guy they brought in a guy who's never had any coaching experience before. They're the ones who brought in everything around it, kind of all threw it at him and say, hey, you're a first-year head coach. Just kind of figure all this out. So if anything, I think it's Sean Payton. Sean Payton is indirectly throwing comments at the same people who are paying his bills at the end of the day.
He's doing a couple of things. One, he's kind of giving Russell Wilson an excuse in sort of, in public, making this excuse for Russell Wilson. Two, he's giving himself kind of a fallback. They won 5 games last year with Russell Wilson. And in the meantime, the Seahawks got better without Russell Wilson. Let's not forget that. So, So Sean Payton is kind of building in excuses for everybody by doing this. The Aaron Rodgers side, I've got zero problem with, a player. He's obviously coming out publicly and sticking up for one of his coaches. I think that Nathaniel Hackett being with the Jets played a big part in Aaron Rodgers' decision to go there. But I'll just say this. I've got no problem with anything either of these guys said. Like, that these coaches think this kind of stuff about other coaches all the time, but none of them are willing to, to sit there with a microphone in front. He did this in a USA Today interview. None of them want to say anything bad about these other guys. They all give you the polished, rehearsed answers to everything. So why should we be mad at Sean Payton for coming out and actually saying something when nobody else wants to say anything? So I've got and he came back and he apologized. He's like, well, I was still wearing my TV hat, because he was on Fox and all this stuff last year. I realize, again, like he's saying this about a guy who he followed, he took his job, but I've got no problem with him saying it. And the best part about this whole thing is, like, you couldn't have written the script for this any better because these two teams are going to play in week 5. And it's like giving us all, it's like a pro wrestling, card buildup that we're getting out of this whole thing. They're shooting back and forth, and they're cutting promos left and right for the NFL and the network. So I've got no problem with anything either of these said. Sean Payton spoke his truth. Aaron Rodgers spoke his truth. And I would rather have that because it gives us something to talk about, something actual interesting to talk about. And again, not getting these vanilla comments, that you usually get from coaches. It's not coaches speak by any means.
Yeah, I respect that. And it's definitely opened me up to a side of things I didn't think of in I guess, because like you were saying, there's obvious, a lot of coaches do a lot of talking behind each other's back. And I do respect Peyton for, basically just being upfront about it. There was no going behind anyone's back. He was very, said how he honestly felt. And that's also, respectable and admirable at the same time. And yeah, like I get it. Hackett was bad last year. It was objectively bad coaching. But again, it's a guy in his first year and he was thrown a lot of pieces and told to make it work. So like, it doesn't, like, no one's riding Cliff Kingsbury right now. Like there was an article today.
No, I mean,
that's Cliff Kingsbury as well. And his lack of,
that's true. I think the job
detail and stuff.
And that's a fair point too. The job Kingsbury did with more of a roster in Arizona, I think was definitely worse than the Broncos, even though, the Broncos are kind of in an in-between place right now with what they've got on their roster.
I guess what I'm saying is all of these guys are still actively coaching, so there's no reason to publicly slander someone as they're still actively coaching, because it's still a ring of coaches who, especially in the NFL, like guys get second opportunities. Guys, there's the average, I feel like, length of a coaching tenureship is like 2 to 3 years, and then they're on to somewhere else. So it's like, that's the only part I didn't respect, is that he's, in a ring of guys who are, it's ultimately kind of like a bro code almost, right? Like you don't just publicly air out your other.
And that's my point. That's why to me it's fun to hear it, because there is a bro code. They typically don't come out and slam each other like that. But again, he's going to have to put up or shut up now, because he's going to play the Jets in week 5, and it's going to be on
and like
CBS.
You said, he's really kind of added this cushion for himself of like, oh, everything was so bad last year. And it's like, well, if you're just as bad or worse, then you've really dug yourself a grave.
Right. But he better be ready, because I think if Hackett and Aaron Rodgers have their chance and they're in the, they're primed to just run it up if the situation presents itself against the Broncos in that game. So Jesse, Subway is offering free sandwiches for life to someone who's willing to legally change their name to Subway. They'll be given $750 to cover the expenses of the name change. Would you do it?
So if you asked me this question a year ago, I would have been like a 1 out of 10. Today, I'm like a 3 out of 10. Their sandwiches are a lot better. I like that they've, revamped their menu. They got all these, athletes, whether it be Charles Barkley, Steph Curry, I can't, there's multiple people, but again, I like the rebranding they've done. I like
Subway Christophic says yes.
I like that their sandwiches are better. But yeah, I'm saying a year ago from now, I'm considering it more now than I would have a year ago. But at the end of the day, I would never do it as enticing as it sounds. If it was Jersey Mike's, I think you might have a strong shot out of me. But Subway subs just, they've run their course on me. It would nice to be, have free sandwiches for life, but I think I'd get really over it, and then I'd get tired of hearing people call me Subway, all the time.
Carlos is bringing the heat. 3 shows, 1 day. Thank you very much. Glad to have you here, Carlos. And there's no way I could do it either. I would not want to be referred to as Subway. I couldn't go for it. I'm trying to think of like what product it would have to be. Like what gasoline Steyrs, if I got gasoline for life or something, or
that kind of rhymes though.
Yeah, that's right. Old gasoline Steyrs, he's on fire. Blimpy. Ooh, Blimpy. Ooh, man, I haven't had a Blimpy in a long time, and I think there's a reason why.
Who's the White Castle of the group?
Oh, that'd make you think there, wouldn't it? Josh, by the way, wants to know how bad Dallas looked at training camp.
Man, that's just a straight shot for no reason.
I know. They did. I did make my trip to Oxnard last week when I was in
Is it
California
the
and
first
caught it.
time you've ever been to Oxnard?
It is
That's
very
pretty
first
cool.
time. Yeah, we did the whole like Central Coast California thing from Monterey, San Luis Obispo, and all the way down into
Number one
Oxnard.
ND fan has a pretty good one.
Number one ND fan, Mountain Dew Driscoll. Hey, I don't know if Vince is still there. I don't know what his would be. If I don't know what his limit would be if he would go in on the subway or not.
His
But
would be how many is it just one per him every day, or does he get one for every member of his family every day? I think that'd be the deciding line for Vince.
that's
Especially
right.
5 years ago.
If they did, like one of those monster subs, like if it was one of
And he
those,
could just cut it up for everyone. I
he
think
could
there'd be
feed the
serious
D'Adarios for a
consideration.
week. That's right. He would. I know his wife might be pushing for it. Alfredo D'Addario.
I knew it was going to be something that rhymed, and it would be Italian.
I thought he would say like Whopper D'Addario or something like that.
Big Mac D'Addario.
Yeah. It's funny how pro training camp and college training camp are not that dissimilar. The Cowboys did not show very much, and what they did when they did do anything, they had 2 practice fields outside like Notre Dame, and of course, when they were doing anything somewhat live, they did it on the far field, away, as far away from as many people as possible. So they didn't show a lot. The funniest thing that happened was early in practice. They had Dak Prescott, Mike McCarthy, the head coach, who's taken over the offense this year. He was down there with the quarterbacks. They had the quarterbacks throwing into those nets, and you know how they've got like those big, like the slots, the holes in the net. They had
targets.
3 different holes. And when Dak would hit the target, he would get cheered pretty loudly just for hitting a net target that was hanging underneath the goalpost. When he would miss the target, he was booed pretty lustily as well. None of the other quarterbacks got cheered or booed, but Dak got both based on how he did or didn't hit the target in the net. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Something I wanted to sneak in here. We're about 24 hours away from the trade deadline. Do you have any, if you had to hypothesize any big moves, do you think it's going to be relatively quiet? Do you think there's something big getting ready to happen? What are your overall thoughts I know you probably watch more MLB Network during the day than I do, so you kind of see probably more of, some rumors or stuff going around. I'm just curious of potentially stuff that you've heard. I've heard a lot about Verlander. But yeah, I'm just curious, with about 24 hours left, what kind of big blockbuster move do you anticipate, if any?
D-Hawk says Verlander to Baltimore. I think the Orioles have got to make a big move. The Ohtani thing is still interesting because
the Angels have basically said they're going to ride it out, and now they're trading for everyone.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. They've been buyers, but just within the last 24 hours or so, I've started to see even more about Ohtani maybe moving, and they're talking about the big markets.
I've
being
heard New
in
York,
play.
Chicago, and one other one.
Yeah, the Cubs.
I've heard the Cubs, and the Cubs got the money to do it. I didn't want to bring that up, but I've heard it more than once now.
Would you? How far in?
And you got Suzuki already, in Chicago. I think that helps a little bit.
I mean, would you? That's a very good point. Like you'd have a teammate he could.
That's what I mean. And they both of them would be buddies together.
You go in and you get him this year, and then you potentially got an ace plus the best bat in your lineup,
right?
If you're able to re-sign him down the road.
What do you think of the Rangers kind of going, pushing their chips in? Got a lot of starting pitching, right? They got was it Scherzer and Montgomery from the Cardinals? Montgomery's all right. That's more of a depth piece. I feel like the back end of your rotation.
Yeah.
But it's exciting. I think what a lot of people brought up. I can't remember what broadcast I was listening to the other day, but I think the most exciting thing right now is, compared to in years past, I mean, we just, like, the Orioles are leading their division. The Texas Rangers are leading the division. The Reds are leading their division. You're just seeing a lot of teams that we haven't really CB divisional leaders in a while. And I think that's pretty fun about baseball. Now you're seeing them being aggressive about their moves. Like the Orioles are going to get aggressive here before the deadline, and the Rangers have already been, aggressive before the deadline. And I'm curious to see who's going to sell it all off. I think the Cardinals are going to be one of those teams to kind of sell it all off here in a little bit.
Yeah, I think so as well, the way things are played out for them. And, the Cubs were sort of, teetering. What are they going to do? And then they rattle off 8 straight, and all of a sudden they're right in the thick of things. Now they've got a big decision to make in terms
they got
of
to add
do they
someone
go
in
out
that bullpen.
Yeah.
I think at the very least they add someone in the bullpen, and you might try to get a first baseman for depth. I've heard Yan Mancado from the White Sox. The Cubs and White Sox are very notorious about swapping players at the deadline just because it's an easy transition. It's the same city. Oh, wow. They just got Candelario from the Nationals. That's huge.
And I believe Candelario is a guy who was
at one point.
He was in the Cubs organization for a while.
I want to say he was a part of that Aroldis Chapman trade, but I could be wrong.
That sounds right.
Wow. And so what makes that interesting to me is, Candelario, they're lacking first and third baseman this year, but they've got away with allowing Bellinger to play first base because Tauchman has been so tremendous in center field. I mean, the guy just robbed a home run to win the game the other night, but, saved a walk-off from the Cardinals. And so Morel is like the obvious long-term situation at third, but it seems like they're just not ready for him to be there yet. So Candelario is is kind of the rental for the rest of the season.
Yep. Very interesting. Not a huge move, but decent piece. We'll see.
Like they're platooning 3 guys at third base right now. So obviously that was something that they wanted to address.
Getting the most out of. Are you more sold on David Ross as a manager today than you were 3 weeks ago?
I have to say, because he got them to win when they really needed to win, and they're the team with the highest batting average, the most runs scored since the All-Star break. Like they've just been mashing the baseball all around. So yeah, there's coaching involved with that. I guess my frustration would be, where has this been all season? They're the only team in the division with a plus or minus run differential. How much that matters to a lot of people, I don't know. But you look at their roster and you look at, run differential. They just should be a little bit better. And I still question Ross's continuous lineup changes. There's guys I get it moving guys around, but just no one's got a set spot, it feels like, anymore. Do we know that it's all coming from him though, or is it front office analytics? That's what's hard to tell these days, is who's actually pulling the strings, because so many of the decisions are made by the analytics department, who just, spit out the sheet and hand it to the manager that given day. Yeah. And that's obvious. Yeah. It's something you got to look at. And I guess I'll kind of end it here. I still question his bullpen decisions when he brings in kind of certain guys here and there, and who he decides to go to. So we'll see. There's about 55 games left. Cubs are 3.5 out. It's anyone's division. They're obviously all in now because they acquired Candelario. But this is like when the baseball season is at its best. The trade deadline, it shows who's committed to all in and all out. And then you got about 55 games remaining to figure it out,
Yep. Thank you very much, Derek. And we will wrap it up with that tonight. Man, we've got a lot coming up this week. We've got another practice viewing in the morning, of course, and then we won't have anything until Saturday. But once Saturday hits, we'll be out there quite a bit for the next few days after that. So a lot coming up. So it's training camp, baby, and we're inching our way. I think we're 26 days away from kickoff at this point on August 26th. Smash the like button on your way out. We do appreciate it. And, of course, subscribe, rate, and review. And we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.